Um, Michael Jackson released the Thriller album uh, in November uh, or early December, I'm not really sure, of 1982. And Thriller, as we know, would go on to become the most successful album in uh, pop music history. The Thriller album would become the number one album in the country in 1983 and in 1984. Okay? So it didn't dominate 1982. Okay? Uh, Nor did it dominate 1985. Okay? But it was the number one album in the country for 2 years, 1983 and 1984. Okay? Now, for those of us that are old enough to remember that time, what would we refer to that period of time? We can't really say. If you were referring to the time wherein Thriller was the dominant album in the country and in the world, what would we refer to that time as? You can't really say it was the Thriller year because it was more than a year. Okay? And it wasn't 3 years. It was just two. Okay? Well, to me, that would have to be an era. So I would refer to 1983 and 1984 as the Thriller era. And it would be more precise to call that the Thriller era than perhaps even the Michael Jackson era. The Michael Jackson era lasted a lot longer than just the Thriller era. Okay? When Michael Jordan retired and played baseball for a period of time, more than a year, how would we refer to that period of time? What we can all remember where we were during that period of time. When Michael Jordan retired from basketball and he went and played with the Chicago White Sox farm team, and he was playing where were you in life during that period of time, and what do you refer to that period of time? You refer to that period of time as an era because it was more than a year. You see, if he had just retired at the beginning of 93 and then came back at the beginning of 94, then we could call it, okay, well, that was the year Michael Jordan retired. But it was more than a year. So we have to refer to it as an era. Okay? Similarly, the Buffalo Bills went to 4 straight Super Bowls. And in the AFC, dominated an era. Okay? Now, they didn't dominate the NFL during that era because they didn't win a Super Bowl. They didn't win any of them. But they dominated the AFC for an era. You have to call that something. Okay? That's an incredible accomplishment to go to 4 straight Super Bowls, to win the AFC championship game 4 straight seasons in a row. What do you call that? Okay? What is it called when you dominate a period of time? What is it called when you dominate an era? What is it called? I've gotten a lot of feedback from my uh, the first video I released on this channel, which is Kobe Bryant is the only player in NBA history to lead 2 dynasties. I've gotten a lot of feedback from people that have a problem with me using the term dynasty, and also they have a problem. They parrot the Shaq led the first one nonsense, but they have a problem with me using the term dynasty. And one guy said, well, a dynasty means you dominated a decade. Okay? And, the thing is, we can define the term dynasty however we want. But you have to give a name to dominating a period of time that's shorter than a decade per se, but longer than a year. You've got to give that a name. And I think the name I think that is an era, and when you are on top for that era in the context of a team sport, I think you have to call that a dynasty. There really isn't another term that accurately describes that. Okay? What is it called when you go to 3 straight finals and you win back to back? Who dominated the late 80s, early 90s before the Bulls? Who dominated that? Who dominated the period of time wherein Michael Jordan was away playing basketball? Who dominated? Who dominated the period of time wherein right after the 2012 strike up until Steph Curry, who dominated that time? You have to give that a name. That's called a dynasty. Who dominated the period of time between the Lakers' championship runs? So, Shaq and Kobe split up, and then Kobe starts to win again in 2008. So who dominated that period of time? Okay? You have to call these periods of time something. You have to call them what they are, dynasties. Tim Duncan won 3 out of 5. You have to call that something. You have to call it something when you go to the Western Conference Finals 3 straight years and you win back to back. You have to call it something. Whatever it is you want to call it, Kobe did it twice with 2 different teammates. Nobody else can say that. Whatever you want to call it, Kobe did it twice with 2 different teammates. Okay? The other problem I had with, or that I have with some of the feedback that I've gotten, is this concept of who, quote, leads the dynasty. So let's say we agree that player A, that period A was a dynasty, well, then who led it? Well, to me, if you are a Hall of Famer on all of those teams, you led it because history, NBA history suggests that wouldn't have happened but for your participation. Role players are interchangeable. Hall of Famers are not. You can't get rid of you can't get rid of Hall of Famers and remain the same team. Okay? So the problem is that let's look at it this way. Let's look at the gold standard of what a dynasty is. What we all agree is a dynasty, and who led it, and why did that person lead it. Okay? Well, the Boston Celtics from 1957 to 1969 were a dynasty. Why? They dominated that era. Who led them? Bill Russell. Why? Bill Russell was there for all 11 of those championships. And he was one of the best players in the league for all 11 of those championships. So from that standpoint, you have to say that was the Bill Russell era. You have to say that he led that dynasty. You have to say that Bill Russell led that dynasty. Now, Sam Jones was there for 10 of those. Okay? But Sam Jones was not one of the best players in the league for a couple of those championships wherein he actually got a ring. Okay? So you have to say that Sam Jones, okay? You have to say that Bill Russell led those championships, that era. You have to say that he led that dynasty. Here's the problem. Scottie Pippen was one of the best players in the league for all 6 of the Bulls championships. And the reason Scottie Pippen is upset is because the public narrative is to give Michael Jordan credit for what he and Michael Jordan did. You can't really say Mike led that championship just because we agree he was the best player, because he had a top 75 player playing with him for all 6 of them. Okay? In his prime. You can't really say that. You can't really say. Why? Because it takes more than just one great player historically to win the NBA championship. It doesn't always, but in the overwhelming majority of cases, I think there's only like a handful of cases in NBA history wherein a championship was won with by a team that only had one Hall of Famer in his prime. It takes 2. And if it takes 2, then 2 people did it. Okay? Moreover, the last 3 championships were won with 3 Hall of Famers in their prime. Make no mistake about it, Dennis Rodman was still a rebounding fiend at the end of that Bulls run. Okay? So, if you want to define it by decades, then you would have to say that Michael Jordan does not have one alone. Kobe does. Kobe, if you take the 11-year period, Kobe won the most championships during that period. Kobe dominated that 11-year period. So I don't really care what word we use for it. To me, you know, you the term dynasty. I mean, people that don't want to give Kobe credit, that that they chafe at the word, but that's the only accurate word. Okay, you have to call defending a title something. You have to call it something. Okay, and defending a title means that the league came for you and you stayed on top. Just like a lot of people put out albums in 1984 and Thriller stayed on top. Okay, you have to call it something. Okay, if you win back-to-back championships, and especially if you go to 3 straight finals, that's a dynasty.